it's because the far right wants Judge Barrett's views on the court, but not Judge Garland's. The truth is, this nomination is part of a decades-long effort to tilt the judiciary to the far right, to accomplish through the courts what the radical right and their allies, Senate Republicans, could never accomplish through Congress. Senate Republicans failed to repeal the Affordable Care Act, so President Trump and Republican attorneys general are suing to eliminate the law in court. Republicans would never dare to attempt to repeal Roe v. Wade in Congress, so they pass onerous laws in state legislatures that they control to drive that right to the point of near extinction, and then provoke the Supreme Court to review Roe v. Wade.
I mean, this is kind of ridiculous.
The far right has never held a majority on the court to limit Roe v. Wade or Griswold, but if Judge Barrett becomes Justice Barrett, it very well might. And if you're looking for some hard numbers to prove that the political right considers ideology and not just qualifications, consider this. Under Justice Roberts, there have been 80 cases, 80, decided by a 5-4 majority, in which the 5 justices nominated by Republican presidents came down on one side, and the 4 justices nominated by Democratic presidents came down on the other. 80 cases.
So, for anyone just tuning in, I'm pretty sure that the vote is going to take place approximately 7:30 p.m., so we're just listening to Chuck Schumer ramble here right now about, you know, bogus. He's just trying to take his time. He's going to stand.
It would be the most remarkable coincidence in the history of mathematics if 9 justices,
he knows he can't stop it, so
calling balls and strikes, exhibited the
he's just trying. He knows the cameras are going to be on him, some people are going to be watching it, so
80 times. We all know what the game is here, so stop pretending. Stop pretending there aren't entire organizations dedicated to advancing far-right judges. Stop pretending that the political right doesn't spend millions of dollars.
Stop pretending you can do anything to stop this vote, Chuck Schumer.
And support certain judicial candidates because they only want qualified judges. No, they want to systematically and permanently tilt the courts to the far right. So does Judge Barrett have views on legal issues? You bet she does. And that brings me to the one great and terrible truth about this nomination. The American people will suffer the consequences of Judge Barrett's far right, out of the mainstream views for generations.
Far right.
Judge Barrett came before the Judiciary Committee and refused to answer nearly any question of substance.
I guess if you consider someone who interprets the Constitution as they're supposed to, which is literally the job of a Supreme Court justice, if you consider that far right, then
she would not say if she thought Medicare and Social Security were constitutional. She could not even offer platitudes in responses to questions about the peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah, she's not supposed to comment on any cases that could be brought forward to the Supreme Court when she's on the court. No, she literally is not allowed. It's part of the judicial canon, Chuck Schumer. I'll send you a link if you want.
But the thing is, we do know how Judge Barrett thinks. She views certain rights, like the right to privacy, through a pinhole. She was closely affiliated with organizations who advocated the outright repeal of Roe v. Wade. But she views other rights, like the right to keep and bear arms, as almost infinitely expansive. She once authored a dissent arguing the federal government does not have the authority to ban all felons, from owning guns. Only a few hours ago, the Republican senator from Missouri proudly declared from the Senate floor that Judge Barrett is the most openly pro-life judicial nominee to the Supreme Court in his lifetime. Quote, "This is an individual," he said of Judge Barrett, "who has been open in her criticism of that illegitimate decision, Roe v. Wade." He was being more honest than most of the talk around here, which says it's only about qualifications. Judge Barrett has proudly fashioned herself in the mold of her mentor, Justice Scalia, who before his death appeared set to declare union fees to be unconstitutional, driving a stake into the heart of the American labor movement.
Practically everything that
While
the federal
American
government
workers
does is
break their back to
unconstitutional.
make ends meet and earn ever less of ever-growing corporate profits,
I'm going to have
Justice
another
Scalia's
video
former
coming up
clerk
later
portend for the
that
future of
probably
labor
after
rights?
the election at this point,
Without voting.
just because so much
Judge
going on.
Barrett has
But
suggested that
essentially this next video, it's going to be a series about the Constitution where I'm going to dive into each article of the Constitution, what it actually sets forth, and then if it gets any traction, I'll also go on and talk about all the different amendments to the Constitution. But I mean, Article 1, Section 8 essentially lays out what the government can do and what they're allowed to do. Now, mind you, this is just the federal government. The state government can do whatever they want. But, you know, I mean, the easiest way to understand it and to know what the government is allowed to do under the Constitution is to just read it. It's very simple. It's very short. It's probably a couple hundred words, 500-600 words maybe at most. And I mean, it's essentially they can tax to provide for the military. They can create the military. They can create roads. They can create a post office. It's very basic stuff. There's nothing like create a socialized Medicare. You know, they can't even make money. They're not even allowed to print money according to the Article on Section 8. So, which is interesting because that's actually one of the I know for any of you guys who have been watching the actual confirmation hearings of Amy Coney Barrett, a lot of the super precedent cases came up and stuff like that. And essentially there's 7 super precedent cases that are widely accepted by practically every judge as being super precedent. And one of those, sorry, I'm having problems with my mic. One of those is the legal tender cases. And I believe these happened in the mid to late 1800s, and essentially what they were is they were a series of cases in which the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that you were allowed to essentially print paper money. So, well, let's continue listening to Chuck Schumer. I'm sure he has plenty of good stuff to say. Not a waste of time at all.
For generations, and based on her views on the issues, not on her qualifications, but her views on the issues, Judge Barrett puts every single one of those fundamental rights, American rights, at risk. So I want to be clear with the American people. The Senate majority this Republican Senate majority is breaking faith with you, doing the exact opposite of what it promised 4 years ago, because they wish to cement a majority on the Supreme Court that threatens your fundamental rights. And I want to be very clear with my Republican colleagues. You may win this vote, and Amy Coney Barrett may become the next
win this vote, not may.
Of the Supreme Court.
I think there's only one Republican who said they're not going to vote yes.
Get your credibility back. And the next
not Lisa
time the American
Murkowski.
people give Democrats
Not
a
sure who it
majority
is.
in this chamber,
Let me pull it up.
you will have forfeited the right to tell us how to run that majority. You may win this vote, but in the process, you will speed the precipitous decline of faith in our institution, our politics, the Senate, and the Supreme Court. You will give an already divided and angry nation a fresh outrage and open a wound in this chamber that will take a very long time to heal. You walk a perilous road. I know that you think that this will eventually blow over, but you're wrong. The American
Susan Collins
people will
of
never
Maine.
forget this blatant act.
She's the only one who said she isn't going to.
They will never forget your complete
I think Lisa
disregard for their
Murkowski
voices,
is a
for the
toss-up.
people
I've heard.
standing online right now and
Let's see
voting
here.
their choice, not your choice.
Oh, okay. So Lisa
We'll never
Murkowski and Susan Collins
the
did
lack
vote no
of
in the cloture
consistency,
vote to advance it to
honor,
the Senate.
decency,
So that vote was launched 30 hours
fairness,
ago.
and
The way it works is there's a
They will
vote to
never
bring it
forget.
out of committee, which I believe happened Thursday morning. and that vote just needs a bipartisan majority. The Republicans changed the rules prior to it because Chuck Schumer essentially he organized a boycott in which they weren't going to show up, so it would have been impossible for them to get a bipartisan majority, right? Because you need essentially one person from each party at least and a majority. So none of them showed up, or none of them were going to show up, and the vote was scheduled for like 11 or 12, noon, sometime around noon, right? And they weren't going to show up. Mitch McConnell and the senators on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham, found out about this, so they decided to change the time to 9 a.m., and right before that, they held a vote saying that they were going to change the Senate rules, because Senate can change their own rules whenever they want. So they changed the rules to make it so that they didn't need the bipartisan part. And then they passed it at 9 a.m. Chuck Schumer wasn't there because they didn't know it was at 9 a.m. because they changed the time really quickly. And, a little crappy move, but I mean, it's politics. Democrats would have done the same thing, so I don't really care. But they changed it, and they passed with a 12-0 vote. All the Republicans voted yes. And then it went Sunday, it went to the Senate cloture vote, and that is where the entire Senate will vote to pass it on to a real vote. So it's kind of weird. You have 3 votes. You have 1 vote to bring it out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and then you have a vote in the Senate with everybody, and that's like the vote to have a vote, kind of, right? So that vote happens, and then the rule is that after that first Senate vote happens, you have to give 30 hours for debate on the floor before the next vote. And that vote that happened 30 hours ago was 51-48 in favor of bringing the vote to the actual floor, which we should see in about 20 minutes here, 15 maybe. And the 2 Republicans who voted against that were Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine. So if you guys are in Alaska or Maine, vote those people out next time you can. All right, here. Chuck Schumer's done, so let's chime back in here.
Without objection. Well, this evening, the Senate will render one of the most consequential judgments it can ever deliver. We will approve a lifetime appointment to our nation's highest court. Since the ink dried on the Constitution, only 114 men and women have been entrusted to uphold the separation of powers, protect people's rights, and dispense impartial justice on the Supreme Court. In a few minutes, Judge Amy Coney Barrett of Indiana will join their ranks. This body has spent weeks studying the nominee's record.
Come on, let's go, Mitch.
We've examined 15 years
Get to the vote.
Scholarly writings, about 100 opinions from the Seventh Circuit, and testimonials from legal experts running the gamut from close colleagues to total strangers.
For those of you just tuning in, it's expected to be around 7:30, so this should be the last. I'm not entirely sure, but this should be the last senator who speaks before the vote. So
all of it has pointed to one conclusion. This is one of the most brilliant, admired, and well-qualified nominees in our lifetime. Intellectually,
yeah, she is
Judge Barrett
exceptionally well qualified. That is for sure.
All-star.
Even everyone she worked with at Notre Dame said that she was exceptionally well qualified, and
she clerked on the second highest federal court.
They all sent a letter of recommendation to the Senate Judiciary Committee that she should be confirmed. So, and these are Democrats, Republicans, left-leaning, conservatives, liberals alike, right? They all thought that she was extremely well qualified. Everyone everyone on the left is saying she's not, or going to threaten lives, threaten the Affordable Care Act, threaten abortion, things like that. that's just political banter. I mean, her job is to apply the law, like Mitch McConnell just said. Her job is to apply the law as it was written, and her written record is well known, and it definitely is a record of applying the law as it is written. She doesn't add her own political opinion into the law. That's not her job. That's the job of the legislature.
She earned the highest rating from the left-leaning American Bar Association. They marveled at, quote, breadth, diversity, and strength of the positive feedback they received from judges and lawyers of all political persuasions. If confirmed, this daughter of Louisiana and Indiana will become the only current justice with a law degree from any school not named Harvard or Yale.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Any school not named.
That was brought up during the confirmation hearings, and I did not know that. I did not know that she was the first. She'll be the first justice who is not from Harvard or Yale, which is cool. I mean, I guess whatever, right? Wherever you can find the best judges. If they're always from Harvard or Yale, then that's fine, right? But it is cool to kind of mix it up a little bit. It shows that we have some other law schools that are competing outside of the mainstream Ivy League schools, so that's good.
Her past clerks describe an exemplary boss. Her fellow scholars describe a winsome, respectful colleague who is tailor-made for the collaborative atmosphere of the court. By any objective standard, colleagues, Judge Barrett deserves to be confirmed to the Supreme Court.
That is correct. By objective standards, that is definitely correct.
In just a few minutes, she'll be on the Supreme Court.
You know, the biggest pushback from the Democrats is that they're rushing this nominee through, and that they didn't do it for Merrick Garland back in 2016. To counter that, so the Democrats are essentially saying that that Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and the Senate Republicans are just, they're going against precedent. It's entirely untrue. There have been, I believe, either 28 or 30, somewhere around 30, right? There's been somewhere around 30 vacancies that have been opened up into the Supreme Court in the fourth year of a president's term, right? Which is an election year. And of those 30 times, something like 19 of them happened when the president and the Senate majority were of the same party. And of those, 17 of them were confirmed, right? And the other 11 times is when the president was of a different party of the Senate. And of those 11 times, there's only been 2 times in the history of the entire United States where that nominee was confirmed. So precedent actually says that if the president is of the same party as the Senate majority, then they will be confirmed in the fourth year, no matter what. So precedent actually does say that. Now, granted, this, Amy Coney Barrett's nomination and confirmation was, it was in less than 45 days, which is one of the quickest. It's not the quickest, definitely not the quickest. I believe Ruth Bader Ginsburg was confirmed in somewhere around the same amount of time, somewhere between 40 and 50 days, I'm pretty sure. So, and that's who Amy Coney Barrett is replacing. So, I mean, it's not like the Republicans are going against precedent here. So that argument is just completely bogus to me. That is an argument that the Democrats make because they know that most people out there in America are uninformed voters, and they will get emotionally attached to this type of argument, even though this argument is not correct, and it's based on a false premise. So let's go on. Let's listen to Mitch McConnell a little more.
2000s boasting about their brand new strategy of filibustering qualified nominees from a Republican president. They were proud of it. They found a new way to halt the process. Stop those crazy right-wing judges that Bush 43 was going to send up. They pioneered it.
Yeah, so he's talking about when Harry Reid, Democrat senator, he's not a Democratic senator any longer, but he was when
it just wasn't done. Oh, you could do it.
He was when Obama was in office, and what he did was he eliminated the filibuster.
And the best evidence.
He eliminated the 2/3 majority vote.
Couldn't do it.
You used to have to get 60 votes in the Senate,
52 to 48,
which
and all of us
required.
know that any one of us
I
in
mean,
this
when you
body
needed 60
will have
votes in the
power.
Senate, I think that was good, right? I think essentially what that did is that required people to compromise. It required the Democrats and the Republicans to come together and compromise on a candidate that they can both agree on. Everyone's happy, right? Compromise. But now, when Harry Reid eliminated that under Obama, just to push through some of those radical justices, it completely threw that out the window. Now you only need a simple majority, which is only 50. So things started going downhill around that time. Things started going downhill way before that, and that's a topic for a different video, but that's what he's talking about right here. He's talking about how Harry Reid got rid of the filibuster and the supermajority, and that's what led to this type of stuff happening, where you only need 51 votes or 50 votes to 51 in this case is what it looks like they'll get. It looks like it'll be 51 to either 48 or 49. So
in 1992 and 2007 helpfully volunteered how they would have dealt with a nominee like we did in 2016. The then chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Joe Biden, helpfully volunteered in 1992 when Bush 41 was running for re-election that had a vacancy occurred, they wouldn't fill it. There wasn't a vacancy, but he just helpfully volunteered how they would deal with it if they had one. If there's a vacancy, we won't fill it. Well, to one-up him, Leader Harry Reid and his...
I don't know why they have to do this. I don't know why they have to sit in front of the Senate and,
18 months.
Tell these old stories, about Senate,
period,
and all these things that happen. No one cares. Why can't they just show up and vote and go home?
That's a fact. What we're talking about here
Sorry
are
about
the
that.
facts about how we got to where we are. I understand my Democratic friends seem to be terribly persuaded by their version of all of this. All I can tell you is I was there, I know what happened, and my version is totally accurate. The truth is, on all of this, we owe the country a broader
Take my
discussion.
vitamins.
Competing claims about Senate customs cannot fully explain where we are.
Always take your vitamins, guys. Stay healthy.
Finger pointing does not explain the torrent of outrage and threats which this nomination and many previous ones have provoked from the political left. There are deeper reasons why these loud voices insist it is a national crisis. You just heard it. It's a national crisis when a Republican president makes a nominee for the Supreme Court. Catastrophe looms right around the corner. The country would be fundamentally changed forever when a Republican president...
That's an interesting point. The way that the United States government is structured is that things change very slowly. It takes a long time to make any change. And every 4 years, it seems we hear people on both sides saying that, oh, this is the most important election of our time. If so-and-so is elected, America's going to drastically change. And the fact of the matter is that's never the case. No matter how much you like Trump or no matter how much you hate Trump or like Obama or hate Obama or Biden, whoever, right? No matter how much. After he's gone, or she, after they're gone,
everyone knows in advance that
you look back and not that much effective change actually has happened. That's just how our government is structured. And some people think that's a bad thing. Some people think that things should be able to move quicker and we should be able to pass laws quicker. But that is one of the beauties of American government. It's also one of the issues. But like everything, it has its pros and cons.
And it comes, my colleagues, from a fundamental disagreement on the role of a judge in our republic. We just have a fundamental difference of opinion. We just heard the Democratic leader name all of these things that are threatened by this nominee. Sounds very similar to the tunes we've heard before. Well, we, like many Americans, want judges to fulfill the limited role the Constitution assigns to them. Stick to text, resolve cases impartially, and leave policymaking to the people and their representatives, which is what we do here. We just spent 4 years confirming brilliant, qualified constitutionalists to the Supreme Court and lower courts who understand their roles. 53 circuit judges, over 200 judges in total, and we're about to confirm the 3rd Supreme Court justice. What they all have in common: brilliant, smart, and know what a judge is supposed to be. But the left thinks the framers of our country got this all wrong. They botched the job. The people who wrote the Constitution didn't understand what a judge ought to be. Several Senate Democrats have reaffirmed in recent days during this discussion. They actually find it quaint or naive to think a judge would simply...
So it's 7:38 now. So they're a little late on the vote.
Scalia used to say, if you want to make policy, why don't you run for office?
Pretty sure it's going to happen after he's done speaking, though, so we'll stick around.
Gorsuch said we don't wear red robes or blue robes, we wear black robes. What they want is activist judges. They've made it quite clear. The Democratic leader just a few minutes ago had made it quite clear. So what they're looking for here is a small panel of lawyers with elite educations to reason backward from outcomes and enlighten all the rest of us. Enlighten all the rest of us with their moral and political judgment. Whether the Constitution speaks to the issue or not. They know best what's for us. No matter what the Constitution or the law may say. And, you know, for the last several decades, in many cases, that's what they've gotten. One activist decision after another, giving the subjective preferences of one side the force of law. Across a variety of social, moral, and policy matters like a healthy society would leave to democratic debate, the personal opinion of judges have superseded the will of the people. Now, they call that a success, and they want more of it. President Obama actually was refreshingly honest about this. He said he wanted to appoint judges who had empathy. Well, think about that for a minute, colleague.
Empathy?
What if you're the leader?
That has nothing to do with interpreting the Constitution.
For whom the judge does not have empathy. You're in tough shape. You're in tough shape. So you give them credit for being pretty honest about this. That's what they're looking for. The smartest, leftish people they can put to make all the decisions for the rest of us, rather than leaving it to the messy democratic process to sort these things out the way the framers intended. And that is why, it's clearly why we have taken on such an outsized, combative atmosphere with regard to these confirmations. That's why they've become so contentious. Because they want to control not only the legislative body, but the judicial decisions as well. Let me just say this, there's nothing innate about legal training that equips people to be moral philosophers. There's just nothing inherent in legal training that equips people to be moral philosophers.
Agreed.
And incidentally, as I just said, that's why these confirmations have taken on such an outsized unhealthy significance. The remarks we just heard from across the aisle show exactly why the framers wanted to stop the courts from becoming clumsy, indirect.
Got a headline over here from the Daily Wire.
That belong in this
Joe
chamber
Scarborough said that Trump would, quote, kill reporters if he could get away with it. A little bit extreme, Joe Scarborough.
The left does not rage and panic at every constitutional judge because they will simply enact our party's policy preferences.
Crazy.
Any number of recent rulings make that very clear. The problem that every judicial seat occupied by a constitutionalist is one fewer opportunity for the left to go on offense. For the left to go on offense. At the end of the day, this is a valid debate. The difference of opinion on the judicial role is something the Senate and our system are built to handle. But there's something else, colleagues, our system cannot bear. As you've heard tonight, we now have one political faction essentially claiming they now see legitimate defeat as an oxymoron. They now see legitimate defeat as an oxymoron. Our colleagues cannot point to a single Senate rule that's been broken, not one. They made one false claim about committee procedure, which the parliamentarian dismissed. The process comports entirely with the Constitution.
Yeah, so he's...
doubt, do we, that if the shoe was on the other foot, they'd be confirming.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's talking about precedent and stuff right here now, and the constitutional law and constitutional authority to confirm a justice in the fourth year, no matter how much time there is left. For those of you just tuning in, it's essentially you can confirm a justice in the fourth year no matter what you want. That's what the Constitution set out. If anything, there shouldn't be vacancies on the Supreme Court. And, you know, like I said earlier, there have been 30 cases where a vacancy has been opened up on the Supreme Court in the fourth year. And all 30 of those times, someone was nominated by the president to fill the position. And so 19 of those 30 times, the Senate majority was of the same party as the party of the president. And of those 19 times where they were the same party, they were confirmed 17 times. The other 11, when the Senate majority was of a different party of the president, only 2 times was that person confirmed. Merrick Garland was one of those. So, I mean, to act like the Republicans are going against precedent here, confirming someone in the fourth year is simply not true. We have 30 other cases in the past where the precedent has been set like this. So,
we're a constitutional republic. Legitimacy does not flow from their feelings. You know? Legitimacy is not the result of how they feel about it. You know, you can't win them all, and elections have consequences.
Ooh. Sorry about that.
And what this administration and this Republican Senate has done is entirely within the rules of the Senate and the Constitution of the United States. Irony, indeed. Think about how many times our Democratic friends have said, been berating President Trump for allegedly refusing to accept legitimate outcomes he does not like. How many times have we heard that? President Trump won't accept outcomes he does not like.
So the vote was supposed to be around 7:30. I think that was the estimated 30 hours from the vote that happened yesterday to bring it to the Senate floor.
Well,
looks like we're at 7:46 right now, Eastern time. So running a little late, but that's expected.
One of our two major political parties increasingly claims
whenever Senator Mitch McConnell's done speaking here, the vote will take place. So
is somehow illegitimate. And this started actually long before this vacancy, as we all know. 1 year ago, Senate Democrats sent the court, directly, an amicus brief that read like a note from a gangster film.
Gangster film.
They wrote, the Supreme Court is not well. In their amicus brief, the Supreme Court is not well. Perhaps the court can heal itself before the public demands it be restructured. In March of this year, the Democratic leader stood outside the court, went over in front of the court.
Joe Biden called a lid on his campaign again this morning.
And threatened multiple justices.
9 days until the election, and Joe Biden is not even out campaigning. He's not doing anything. He's not answering questions. My personal opinion is it's because all this evidence that is coming forward that he's been involved in some sort of a little bit of like some corrupt action going on. Not necessarily illegal, but it's definitely corrupt.
And in effect saying, if you rule the wrong way.
And the media is just running cover for him, not asking him any questions about it.
For multiple years now, Democrats in this body and on the presidential campaign stump have sought to revive the discredited concept of court packing.
All right, I'm going to mute Mitch for a second here and talk about this article from Gateway Pundit. So, breaking exclusive, text messages show Vice President Biden and his wife colluded to suppress Hunter's actions with a certain minor. Let me pull this over so you guys can see it. So, here's the article here. Yesterday, we reported on former Vice President Joe Biden, who snapped at a reporter who dared to ask him about his son, Hunter. But VP Biden can't get out of this one. Biden did not let WYOU reporter Andy Mahalchik, sorry about that, get through his question before snapping during an event on Saturday. Quote, questions and controversy continue today about Hunter Biden, your son. So let's play this right here.
Okay, Mr. Biden, if I can.
Sure.
Questions and controversy continue today about Hunter Biden, your son's...
there is no controversy about my son. It's all a lie. It's a flat lie because the president has nothing.
Definitely a little bit of controversy, Joe. Hate to break it to you.
Talking about what's happening to their families, he has no plan. In the debate, he has no plan. Everything from the Wall Street Journal, every other major news outlet.
So he's sidestepping the question.
It's simply not true about my son.
Simply not true.
It's classic Trump. Classic Trump. And because he doesn't want to talk about how manufacturing has gone into recession, how our economy's in a hole, how we're approaching a bleak winter. It's estimated 200,000 more people will die of COVID if we don't act more rapidly in terms of dealing with...
Okay, so apparently some texts came out either yesterday or today that showed that essentially that Joe Biden and Jill Biden, his wife, knew that Hunter was like playing around in a sexual manner with some underage girls, and the texts alluded to the fact that they were essentially trying to cover this up with the media and trying to make sure it didn't get out. So Joe Biden has some questions to answer there, not to mention all the other questions about Hunter Biden's laptop and whether or not he was taking money from Chinese officials and Chinese businessmen and things like that. I don't really care personally about the Hunter Biden stuff. That's whatever. But, you know, if Joe Biden was having people hold money in his name, then that's in the very least corrupt. It's not illegal, but it's in the very least corrupt. Let's go on here. Let's see what Mitch is saying.
Built the Senate.
Hurry up, Mitch. Let's get to the vote.
Firewall. Over and over, this institution, our institution, has stood up to stop recklessness that could have damaged our country.
So the point of this debate,
so tonight,
Eric, is essentially that
to do that again. Tonight we can place a
essentially, so there was a vote yesterday that was 51 to 48, and then the Constitution says that they have to have 30 hours between that vote and the final vote to actually confirm her. And you know, I'm not sure what the actual point of the debate is in terms of maybe when the founders framed the Constitution, or maybe maybe 100 years ago, this debate was. I'm guessing if you have like a close call, right, where some people aren't sure, then maybe this last final 30 hours of debate might be able to sway people one way or the other. But today, everyone is so partisan, everyone is so against each other and polarized that no one's going to sway in the last 30 hours of debate. So, you know, if you look at it, today, fundamentally, this debate doesn't really matter. What it is, though, is it's a chance for these politicians to get in front of a camera and to grandstand and to, they know the cameras are on them. They know the people are watching it, and it's a chance for those people to just make another political point. That's all it is. It's a chance for them to get in front of a camera. But Mitch McConnell's done speaking now, so it looks like we should have the vote here soon.
A quorum is present. Can I read? All post-closure time has expired.
Dude, all these people are so old, man.
On the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett of Indiana to be Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. A senator.
Did she just shut him off?
There is a sufficient second. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Braun. Mr. Brown. Mr. Burr.
And they need to lay down some new carpet in this place.
Mrs. Capito. Mr. Carden.
Like worse than my great-grandma's carpet.
Mr. Casey. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Cornyn. Ms. Cortez Masto. Mr. Cotton. Mr. Kramer. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz.
So they're just doing a roll call now.
Mr. Daines. Ms. Duckworth.
Seeing who's here, essentially.
Mr. Durbin.
Where you at, Dick? Where you at, Dick Durbin?
Mr. Enzi. Ms. Ernst. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Gardner. Mrs. Gilliram. Mr. Graham.
We're getting close.
Mr. Grassley. Ms. Harris. Ms. Hassan. Mr. Hawley. Mr. Heinrich. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Hoven. Mrs. Hyde-Smith. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Jones. Mr. Kane. Mr. Kennedy. Mr. King. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Langford. Mr. Leahy.
So I think they're actually voting right now.
Mr. Lee. Mrs. Leffler.
First I thought it was a roll call, but no,
Manchin,
they are
Mr.
saying
Markey.
ayes and nays, so they are actually voting right now. There goes Bernie.
Mr. McConnell.
Bernie needs someone to, like, do his hair. He's always walking around with, like, crazy man hair. He reminds me of,
Ms. McSally.
like, the mad scientist from Back to the
Mr.
Future.
Menendez. Mr. Merkley.
Probably got a flux capacitor under his desk.
Mr. Moran. Ms. Markowski.
Wants to go back in time
Mr.
to the
Murphy.
Soviet Union.
Mrs.
Grow
Murray.
up there.
Mr. Paul.
In communist Russia.
Mr. Perdue. Mr. Peters. Mr. Portman. Mr. Reed. Mr. Risch. Mr. Roberts.
You know, an easier way to tally this vote would just to be
Romney.
which Republicans want to vote no.
Ms. Rosen.
And then Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins can come out and
Mr.
say no.
Rounds.
And then we can go, okay.
Mr. Rubio.
I'm assuming all the other Democrats are no and all the other Republicans are yes. So the vote is 51-49 and we're going home.
Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott of Florida. Mr. Scott of South Carolina. Mrs. Shaheen. Mr. Shelby. Ms. Sinema. Ms.
Here
Smith.
comes Macy Hirono.
Ms. Stabenow.
Did she just say hell no?
Mr. Sullivan.
I'm pretty sure she just walked all the way up to the desk and said,
Mr. Tester.
hell no.
Mr. Thune.
What? So
Mr.
professional.
Tillis.
That is your next generation Democrat right there. Hell
Mr.
no.
Udall.
Come on. Give me a break.
Mr. Van Hollen. Mr. Warner.
Why are these guys walking all the way up
Warren.
to vote? I feel like it's just so they can
White
get in front of the
House.
camera and
Mr.
like,
Wicker.
so the people watching can like be like, can see them up there
Mr.
like,
Wyden.
no, I object to the patriarchy.
Mr. Young.
Let's be completely real. If any of the terrible things like repeal of Affordable Care Act or Roe v. Wade is not going to be appealed. Let's be completely honest. But if it was, states would still, like most states that allow abortion would still allow abortion, and that is their right. Pretty much what I'm saying is practically nothing would change.
Senators voting in the affirmative. Alexander.
It's just an emotional argument because the Democrats know that
Blackburn, Blunt,
most people are
Bojan,
uninformed voters and they
Brown,
vote with their
Burr,
emotions, not their brain.
Capito, Cassidy, Cornyn, Cotton, Kramer, Crapo, Cruz, Daines, Enzi, Ernst, Fisher, Gardner, Graham, Grassley, Hawley, Hoven, Heidsmith, Inhofe,
Is that Elizabeth
Johnson,
Warren?
Kennedy, Langford, Lee,
Chief Warren?
Leffler, McConnell, McSally, Moran.
She should like put some war paint on or
Hall,
something every time she comes to
Perdue,
the Senate.
Portman,
What was she, like
Risch,
0.0,
Roberts,
0.9%?
Rounds,
American,
Rubio,
Native American?
Sass,
She was, I know she was less than
Florida,
the average
South
American. She was
Carolina,
less Native American than the
Shelby,
average person who lives in
Sullivan,
the United States, which
Boone,
is like insane.
Gillis, Toomey, Wicker, Young.
She ran on that first oh yeah, there she is. She just runs all the way up here and sticks her thumb down. Is that Pelosi? No. Pelosi's not even part of the Senate.
Senators voting
That's
in
not
the
Pelosi.
negative. Baldwin, Blumenthal, Booker, Brown, Cantwell, Cardin, Carper, Casey, Collins, Coons, Cortez Masto, Duckworth, Durbin, Feinstein, Gillibrand, Harris, Hassan, Heinrich, Hirono, Kane, King, Klobuchar, Leahy, Manchin, Markey, Merkley, Murphy, Murray, Peters, Rosen, Sanders, Schumer, Shaheen,
That's interesting.
Sinema, Smith,
So,
Van Hollen,
I'm not entirely certain because I
Warren,
was not listening to
Warren,
who voted in the positive, but
Wyden.
Susan Collins voted no.
Mr. Menendez.
And I
Mr.
did not hear
Menendez.
Lisa Murkowski
No.
in
Mr.
the
Schatz. Mr. Schatz.
no list.
No.
So she either voted yes or she didn't vote. She might have abstained from voting.
Mr. Reed.
A lot of times when people
Reed.
wanna vote
No.
and it's an unpopular vote for their party like this, they might just abstain completely so it doesn't show up on the record as them voting against them. So essentially she'll abstain. Oh no, she voted yes. 52. A lot of people didn't show up. 43. No, 52 to 43. All right. I mean, there we have it. We have another Supreme Court justice. The vacancy has been filled. In my personal opinion, this is the most qualified Supreme Court justice that we've had since Clarence Thomas, and Clarence Thomas is still on the court, so he will be soon to go, though, I'm sure. He's one of the older people on the court, so But yeah, that's it. So I'm signing off here, guys. I gotta hop in the shower, do all the regular stuff. So you guys have a good one. If you like it, like and subscribe. This is my first time streaming, but I put out videos all the time about political discourse, and I'm always talking about the news, breaking news, anything like that. I do lean a little bit to the right, but I also call out the BS on the Republican side whenever I see it, because I'm not into that. So all right, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.